Hippie Jesus is back. So the Bible 5-part miniseries is officially over, and I'm here to give you my thoughts on parts 4 and 5, which were pretty much about Jesus' ministry. There were some things I liked and some things I disliked, and so I'm just going to kind of list these as I go, and hopefully this doesn't get too convoluted. So as I said before in my first review, I was afraid that the Jesus that they were portraying in the Bible miniseries would be a hippie Jesus, as I like to call it, somebody who wouldn't hurt a fly, who's calm, who'd never get angry at all, and they take this all the way. I mean, Jesus, when he's overthrowing the tables, which is a good sign of how Jesus can get mad and still be perfect, it doesn't look like he's mad. It looked like he's just emotionally disturbed. He looks confused that, like, why would they do this? And he just kind of flips over a couple tables. And then Peter comes in and kind of stops him a little bit, which is weird. And so Peter is basically used just to explain plot details. Like, the Pharisees will ask Jesus a question, and Peter will be like, "It's a trap, Jesus." Like, Jesus doesn't know, and he's pretty much just talking to the audience like, hey, this is what's happening. And one thing that I think that they executed well was the human side of Jesus. You've got Jesus, he looks genuinely afraid at the Last Supper when he's praying, like, please take this cup away from me. You can see the fear in his eyes. The actor did a great job with that. You see when he's riding in on the triumphal entry, you see him, and then he flashes to him carrying the cross down that same road, and he just look in his eyes. He's just terrified. I love how they did that. And another interesting thing they did is Judas was tricked in this interpretation by Caiaphas, which is the high priest. Caiaphas told Judas that all they wanted to do was ask Jesus a couple questions, and that's what he was getting the 30 pieces of silver for, which of course was a lie. So that's kind of interesting the way that they did that, because that kind of is probably what would have happened, because, I mean, Judas, when he realizes that Jesus is getting sentenced to death, he throws the coins back and goes and hangs himself. Another thing, Nicodemus, the follower of Jesus that's a Pharisee, he goes and he talks to Caiaphas, and he's like, we can't kill him, he's an innocent man. And Caiaphas is pulling, like, the threats, all the threats he can. He's like, if you disobey me, you could be put to death. And so Nicodemus is pretty much forced to be silent. And what I thought was really cool was when Judas kisses Jesus to betray him, Peter freaks out and he nails Judas right in the face. Well, I love that, and he takes the sword and, of course, cuts off Malchus's ear. Jesus puts it back on and everything. And another thing that's interesting is Pilate, when he's talking to his wife, he's talking about, or he tells her that it's really crucial to him that they actually execute Jesus, because if they don't, word will get back to the Caesar that he pretty much helped lead a rebellion, or so Caiaphas will tell them. So he's pretty much, in this interpretation, forced to execute him even though he doesn't want to, which is what happens in the Bible. Another thing that's interesting is that when they're sentencing Jesus, they don't let Jesus' supporters into the courtyard. When they're shouting, crucify him, crucifying, they only let their enemies into the courtyard until it fills up with all the enemies and there's no room left for the supporters to be there and be like, save him, which is really weird. And so basically the crucifixion, the whole scene, is basically Passion of the Christ, just without as much blood. A little off topic, is it just me, or does the actress that played Mary look a lot like Steven Tyler? So, of course, Jesus dies and gets resurrected, the Holy Spirit comes upon them, and they start preaching. And the interesting thing is, Stephen, he preaches the gospel, and the high priests get mad, and they take him into the trial, and they try him, and then they stone him, or at least that's what happens in the Bible. In this interpretation, Saul, who's later to become Paul, just yells at Stephen and gets the crowd to stone him, which I thought was kind of unnecessary. And then another point, in the Bible, TV, his name is never Saul, his name has always been Paul. When in the Bible, his name was Saul, and then God changed it to Paul when he was changed. And which is also an interesting thing is on the road to Damascus, in the Bible it says that Paul sees a bright light and then he hears Jesus talking to him, and it's basically Jesus just standing at the road and talking to him, which I thought was an interesting approach to it. I'm not really for or against that. I don't really have an opinion on that, whether or not that's good or bad. So pretty much the rest of the Bible, the conclusion, is just about how the gospel spreads throughout the nations, and it's just the spreading of the gospel through the nations, like I just said. I don't know why I repeated myself. That's where the Bible miniseries ends. So overall, I think they did a pretty good job. There were a lot of inaccuracies in the Old Testament portion of the Bible, but in the New Testament, they got a lot of it right, except for the Hippie Jesus. I just couldn't stand that. And so I'm going to give part 2 of the Bible a 7 out of 10, making the average for the whole series 6.5 out of 10. As always, like and favorite if you enjoyed this video. Share this to your friends. Share this to your enemies. Give them the gospel, and subscribe.